And welcome back. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about prefabbing because we, of course, have done some prefabbing up to this point. So let me just scroll back on up here to where my prefabs are currently. And you can see we have a couple things in here, such as our player. We have the different barrels and stuff like that. And I haven't prefabbed everything at this point. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and add a couple things in here to prefab because one of the biggest things that you may have encountered is if you're going through your levels that you, for example, we did all this stuff, for example, these changes to like our player and our barrels and all this stuff with things. But as soon as I switch over to a new scene, so let me just go to my ceiling level, for example, you can see some of these things have carried over, some of these things have not. And so that is, of course, something to kind of keep in mind here. And my ceiling level, of course, is very bare because I didn't carry over anything in my environment. But just to kind of give you just a preview of some of this stuff. So I'm going to go back to starting level real quick here. And one of the things I want to do is, again, go to my prefabs and let's just start prefabbing some of the things such as our camera, our Cinemachine camera. Let's grab our directional light here as well. And there's that cube that I was playing around with earlier that is, of course, just acting as, I think this one's just a basic light here, if I remember right. Yeah, so that's just the kind of little bit of lighting that we have going on. I'm just going to undo that so it stays in the spot here. So let me just rename this one quick as the cube light, just so that way that I can kind of keep track of that one. Just because again, I didn't remember what this was. Oh, actually, that's my ground layer there. So let me just rename that. That is the ground, and so I could prefab that one if I want to. But with the ground, keep in mind that we might have different terrains and stuff like that. So I'm actually not going to prefab this one right now. Now the environment, of course, is made up of a bunch of different prefabs. If I prefab my environment, what that's going to do is basically allow me to pretty much copy over everything that I have here exactly and bring it back in. So that's really good. For example, if I wanted to take this pre-made layout that I have here and say this is a starting template for everything else moving forward, then I could grab that environment, bring it over as a prefab, and then it would exist as such. Now, some of the thing applies to my lighting. Now, if I look at my lighting right now, you can see these are all just individual point lights in here with these individual pieces here. Now, I could go through and prefab these. So, for example, I'm going to take point light right here. I'm just going to drag that on into my prefabs. And you see that this is now a prefab here. Now, I could have done the same thing with these other ones as well. I could also make those prefabs and then just modify the individual pieces, variants, and stuff like that. But I didn't. I instead had just gone through and duplicated these. The advantage of this, if I had set these up as a prefab, it'd be very easy. Let's say I come in here and change the color or the luminosity, intensity, or maybe this multiplier. I can do all that in the prefab, and then it saves me from having to come back and make those changes later. All right, and so let's go ahead and see how quickly prefabs can help us build a scene. So all I'm going to do is going to go to scene, and let's actually just create ourselves a new scene here. So I'm going to choose create. Let's go ahead and create a new scene, and let's just call this one. Let's see, we already have pass between starting level. Let's just call this the final level. All right. And so with the final level, I'm just, for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go back to my prefab. So let's go and grab that whole environment here. Let's grab that and create that as a prefab. And if I go to my final level, and double click that, make sure I click save on the starting level. And in here, of course, I just have a few things in here. I didn't, of course, bring over my ground. I might want to actually do that. So let me just go back to the starting level here because I didn't actually prefab that one. So let me actually just go ahead and do that just so I have it available to me. And if I go now back to, not the starting level, I want the final level. There we go, save that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove these other things out of the scenes. Now, right now, it's like, I don't know what's here because we didn't have anything in here. So I'm going to go to my prefabs, and I'm actually going to start just dragging things into here. So I'm going to drag in my main camera. I'm going to drag in the Cinemachine camera. I got my directional light. Put my global volume in here. We, of course, are going to also want the ground. Let's see, where's my ground? There it is. Grab that as a prefab. And let's go ahead and drop in our player. And so there's our player. We, of course, are also going to want to grab our environment. Boom, there's that. And so we can see the environment starts populating in here. And I can even start grabbing things such as my barrel variants. All right, so I have those here where I can very easily go and add those in. And so now I have a barrel variant here. And it would be very easy for me to add another one in. And I can easily, just like before, drag that on over so that it creates that finish line here. So I'm just going to go ahead and see how that lines up there. I think that looks pretty good. I'm just going to adjust the top position of this just slightly. So let's just make that 17.5. That looks pretty good. And of course, I want to rename these variants. I'm going to call this the finish barrel. And this will be, or how about not finish barrel, finish pad. There we go. And this is the start pad. Now, we do have to go through and make sure things are correct. So, for example, I know on the Sin Machine camera right now, for example, the tracking target is set to none. And so what I want to do is set that up so this is tracking the player. And so that will, of course, set that up for me. Then let's just go ahead and give this a quick test. See how everything looks here. I'm actually going to click back on the start pad just so I don't have to see that on there. Looks like my player is a little bit off here. All right, we crashed right away. But that's also because how the player is right here right now. You can see if I look in my scene environment, the player is actually not on that pad. So I'm just actually going to move them back so they actually start more on that pad there. So now let's go and try again. All right, so that's looking a lot better there. So yeah, everything is starting to come together real nice. Now, one of the other things you might notice is that our lighting is a little different, which, of course, is one thing that did not carry over. So right now, it is the source is a skybox instead of a color. And so you can see when I start applying this, you can see we can easily start coming in here. If I wanted to pull in the previous color, it's very easy for me to do so. I can, for example, just choose to, add that as a new preset, and that'll allow me to do that. I can, of course, play around here with these other values as well to really start get something. So I'm just going to go ahead and add that in there. Just so we get some of that ambient color already mixing in here. And of course, we can play around with this to make it darker and stuff like that. But, maybe we want this level to be a little bit brighter. So we have all those options available to us. And so I'm actually going to just bring this down because I do want this maybe just a little bit dimmer here so we can kind of replicate some of that feel here. There we go. That looks pretty good on 0.3. I'm just maybe not as dark as my starting level, but I just want to bring in some of that dimness because we are kind of in an enclosure here. Let these lights really kind of shine through. And again, this is just a quick way to do this. I'm just going to save this real quick. Now, keep in mind that if I wanted to truly duplicate a scene, like I wanted to just take starting level and just make another copy of it and then modify it from there, I can just click on that level, hit Control D, and I would then have what looks like starting level 1, and I could rename this. I could call this, for example, mid-level. And that, if I were to open that up, would, of course, be exactly the same as what I find in starting level. You notice these are exactly the same. The only difference is the name of it. So this is just another way if you want to duplicate this. But I think this is going to give us a little bit of heads up about when we start prefabbing different things within our game world.